Are prodigies made or born? Was Mozart really a prodigy? You know, it's the classic argument, nature versus nurture. Now, in my last video, I talked about what talent really is. Today, we're going to talk about why prodigies exist and what part talent plays in their success. So let's get to it. So in my last video, we talked about what talent really is, or rather what talent isn't. So first of all, talent is not a person's ability to more easily learn a particular skill or ability. Rather, talent is really just a personality profile that kind of helps a person practice more correctly and practice longer. Now, a lot of people are unaware, but talent and prodigies and these kinds of things have been actually studied by scientists for many, many years, and they've done studies all around the world. And what they've found is that you always see a couple different things. You always see with these people the element of time, and you always see the element of practice method. So why is time so important? Well, time is important for a couple different reasons. So number one, biologically. So when a human repeats a task over and over and over again, it strengthens the connection between neurons in the brain. Now this connection is surrounded by a substance called myelin. Now this myelin gets harder and harder the more that this action is repeated and repeated, and this myelin protects the connection and insulates it from the other parts of the brain. Now, there was a study that was done in Berlin for some Berlin pianists, and what they found is that the myelin grows the fastest before the age of 16. So this is important because it tells us that if you have a repeated activity, it's best if it occurs before 16, because after the age of 16, then this process of myelin creation lessens and it slows down after the age of 16. So if we want to master a particular ability, then we want to repeat tasks as much as we can before the age of 16. And obviously also for practical reasons, if the earlier a person starts trying to master a craft, the more time that they have. Now, why is the method of practice so important? Well, it's been said that practice makes perfect, but actually a lot of people know by now that actually perfect practice makes perfect, right? So great practice is actually practicing something correctly as many times as you can. So what is one of the best ways to have the best practice method? Well, it's to have an excellent guide there to show you how to practice. So you can take your talent, which is the ability to push yourself a little bit harder, to practice a little harder, to practice correctly, right? And then you combine that with a person who shows you how to practice properly. And then if you start really young, you have all this time in order to do it. So all of this brings us to the subject of environment. How important is environment? How important is environment in cultivating all of this time that's needed and the correct methods to practice properly? Now, Kenneth Clark was a famous English art critic, and he did some research on art over many different centuries. And what he found is that a lot of the best art was created during times of peace and stability. In other words, it's a lot easier to create great art and write great symphonies when you don't have bombs falling all around you, right? So his research found basically the same thing that many, many studies have found, that environment is very important for cultivating any particular talent that might exist. So up first we have Tiger Woods. Now it's been said that Tiger Woods was handed his first golf club when he was 2 years old by his dad. Now by the time he was 7, he'd already won his first golf competition. By the time he was a teenager, he'd already won 6 junior golf world championships. Now, his dad was an avid golfer, and it's said that he was actually an excellent golfer, but perhaps more importantly, his dad was also an expert coach. He'd been coaching for many years. Now, his dad went and taught Tiger up till he was about 5 years old, and then he was handed off to who? Some of the world's greatest golf instructors. Now, perhaps the most famous prodigy of all time would be Mozart, right? So it's been said that Mozart was playing the violin and piano before the age of 5, and he started composing music at the age of 5. And it's been said that, Mozart would play little melodies on the piano and then his dad would write them out. Now, it has to be said, though, that if you look at the very earliest works of Mozart when he was a little kid, they looked an awful lot like Dad's compositions. And it wasn't until Mozart was a lot older that his compositions started to, go a different route and were a little bit different than his dad's, which makes sense because what we need is time. But probably the main point again, though, is that his dad was not only a well-known composer of the time, but he was also a very well-known teacher of music. Now, next up we have Magnus Carlsen. Now, he was one of the youngest chess grandmasters of all time. Now, it's said that by the age of 2, he was already, solving and playing with some fairly complicated puzzles and whatnot, with his dad. And then he started learning chess when he was 5 years old. But again, perhaps more importantly, his dad was an avid and very accomplished chess player who would teach him a lot and spend a lot of time with him learning chess all throughout his childhood. So last but not least, we'll talk about Sarah Chang. Now, Sarah Chang is probably one of the most famous violin prodigies of the 20th century. Fantastic violinist. I personally love her playing. But she has a very similar background as a lot of other prodigies. So it's been said that she started kind of learning piano melodies on the piano from her mom when she was 2 or 3 years old. She got her first violin when she was 4 years old as a little tiny 16th-size violin. And by the time she was 5, she auditioned for the Juilliard School in New York and was accepted. But again, perhaps most importantly was the environment in which all this occurred. Her dad was a musician, he was a composer. Her mom was not only a very accomplished violinist, but also a very accomplished music instructor as well. Now, there's a lot of prodigies that we could talk about, and there's a lot of people who are not considered prodigies, but they're still really good for their age. But what you'll find is a very consistent stream of time and practice method combined with a natural talent to learn a particular skill. So in the next video, we're going to be delving more into the specifics of the best practice method, because we know that having an awesome practice method is a huge part in being able to be much more efficient, be much more successful in practicing, which of course is going to help us achieve all the things that we want to on our instrument. So guys, I hope this video was helpful. I hope I answered a few questions. And if you have any other questions, please put them in the video. A lot of time, your guys' questions is how I come up with my videos. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that alert bell because I'm creating videos all the time. You'll get a notification. Bing, hey, Joel just made another video. And I hope you guys have a nice rest of the week. And of course, as I always say, happy practicing.